I've been reflecting on all the things that make up my wizardhood in life, and if you couldn't already have guessed, gaming has remained a constant my entire life, basically since I've had consciousness and free will to play games without the memory card and get pissed off the next day when my progress wasn't there. I've had gaming as a hobby for my entire life, and it's really funny because most of the people that I grew up with playing games with or being enthused about games with, they've either stopped caring about gaming as much and only pick it up every now and then, or they completely just drop the hobby altogether for various reasons, which I've learned to see through and understand, still being a fan, as big modern companies like Nintendo are about to charge $60 to my bank account for an old game that already came out, but I still feel the need to play on day one. I'm not proud of my decisions. So while I technically am still a team player for the failing AAA modern gaming industry, I am not naive to the reality of the situation, being that most older games are mainly preferred by a lot of gamers in modern times, given the contrast between the quality of those games and the games that are coming out right now. And look, I'm not here to debate which era is better than the other, comparing like older and modern generations, because you're really just comparing the whole foundation of what gaming is to skibbity-doo-dah toilets, whatever the fuck it is. There are merits to both sides of gaming, but in the past 2 years, I've been more invested into gaming than I've ever been in my entire life, playing both backlog titles and most newer releases. So I can tell you that a lot of gamers have pretty valid reasons for wanting to play more retro games, and I do think that some players should make the transition to, for whatever reason that it may be for you, whether you're just wanting to get back into gaming after taking a hiatus, maybe you've played all the modern titles that you've been interested in, so you just want to go back in time, or hell, maybe you've just watched every YouTube retrospect video in the past like 5 years and now you're just invested into this entire thing. Whatever it is, I don't judge. I just know that retro games are almost always a surefire way to hold gaming to what it should always be, and that is just having pure fun, just turning on a video game. Now, when I say retro games, most people in their minds think games from like 20-30 years ago. So when I speak on retro games, I could be speaking as close as the last generation, which basically started off in 2012, 2013, which you probably wouldn't even notice the way that they pump out new games on these older platforms still. Whatever that definition of retro games means to you, I just want to help you understand that having these older games in your main rotation can help spark a new life of fun into your gaming hobby for the foreseeable future. Now, when it comes to what you get out of playing video games, that obviously varies on person to person, but I do think it's safe to say that we all play video games for the base reason of just wanting to have fun and being able to escape the reality of whatever that we're going through. That and the shared human nature need to have game spine fonts that line up correctly, because Nintendo Switch, they just know how to grind my gears. But of course, when it comes to those fun experiences, it's a pretty common notion that many people just aren't having fun with a lot of newer games, in the sense that they can't have exactly what they want to play as soon as they pick up that controller, which is something that I just talked about recently in a video, talking about how games nowadays just aren't as easy to pick up and easy to understand as the older titles. In an age where almost every modern big game has to show off its graphical prowess, its new captivating features and storylines that are obviously amazing in their own right. Like when you look at a title like Baldur's Gate 3, it's hard not to be excited at the overall just branching option that you have playing that title, but some people, they just want a simple game that they can turn on and just have right there, like an older Mario title where they can turn off their brain and just enjoy the game, which is completely fine. And while there still are a lot of newer games, especially in the indie scene, that give you that experience exactly, some people just want to go with what they know and go to their older titles, like I said, with those classic freaking N64 NES era games. Because gaming in itself started off as that same just easy to pick up and understand format when you look at the arcade type of titles, where the game was only what you saw, and if you wanted some sort of like lore or extra story, the closest you got to that was maybe the cheat sheets that you would share with your friends, or maybe you read in a gaming magazine. Like, that is the era of gaming that many people associate with the whole medium, which is cool. And if that's just the experience you want, like playing solitary on your Windows computer, that is obviously a really viable option. But even if it's not just a simple game where there's nothing to really understand, some players just want a title that they can just pick up and have an easier time playing than most modern titles when it comes to control schemes and gameplay mechanics. Take the Wii, for example. As far as game controllers go, this is probably the most accessible option that you have in the entire realm of gaming outside of maybe like mobile games or something. It's motion based, it has minimal buttons, you'll likely only use one hand when you even play on this system. The only problem that you may have is getting too immersed in the games that you play and checking the remote at your freaking monitor. But when it comes down to it, that accessibility factor is something that players really prefer having on these older systems. Like, some players will actually want to aim with the Wii remote rather than having a joystick and wanting to get your hand-eye coordination to an insane freaking combination just to play that game on a console and a regular controller, which is understandable. So as gaming has advanced into an insane degree, if you've already been playing video games for the past couple of years, this might even be something that you question in your whole gaming life, but some players would rather have that more easier experience that older games bring when playing the titles that they just want to have to turn on and have fun with. And then speaking of having fun, I don't think there's anything more fun than having a good time gaming and not breaking the bank, because in modern times, saying that you're a gamer and enjoy all of the most modern experiences that gaming has to offer basically has the same connotation of being a wealthy businessman, because you're gonna have to be in a different tax bracket to afford all this insane priced shit. But of course, with retro games, since this is an older generation and maybe some stores just want to offload all the old stock of games that they may have, or even people just have games that they don't even play anymore, you'll be able to find a lot of these older games for cheaper, and even the consoles as well. And I obviously say all of that loosely because I can't act like there isn't an entire market around retro games and the selling of them, since people put a lot of stock and a lot of value into these older titles, especially of the first party ones, since these are the titles that most people are usually going after when they're looking for games for these older systems. And if I'm being real, I just can't condone paying more than full price for a game, especially if it's older, for just playing that title, because I don't think it's worth more than whatever full price that it came out with, honestly. But luckily, the consoles, on the other hand, unless they're the special edition or the limited edition runs of their respective versions, they are usually much cheaper and way under their initial retail prices. But I only say that with asterisks because I don't want anyone to come after me if that changes in the near future, because look at the new 3DS prices right now. That's scaring me. But as far as the games go, most of the time you'll be able to find a decent deal, especially on the internet, where there isn't an overhead of paying for an entire building of a retro game store to worry about. So having these cheaper one-time prices is definitely a better alternative to paying for a modern subscription that hosts all these retro games now for most systems and gives you actual ownership, which is a big problem within modern gaming, to which many of these systems are dependent on internet connections and all of these third-party DRM services that if they go down, your access to these games usually goes down along with them. So just having another surefire way to have access to these games no matter what happens is an obvious plus side to this side of gaming. And hell, if you grew up with gaming or knew someone that did, you might not even have to go out and seek these consoles or games, because you might just have them laying around just randomly about in your entire house. And that is probably the best way to just go back and play games you might not have played in a long time, or games that maybe your older sibling had that you just go back and play nowadays. Like, as long as your old console doesn't have that red ring of death or those faulty PS2 disc drives that all the slim models seem to have, you probably have a lot of years left in those old systems. So why waste it? Why not just have fun with those games and those systems while you still have them and don't have to break the bank to enjoy the whole hobby? And then for my final main reasoning for enjoying older titles that I think really pertains to the person that enjoys the whole hobby of gaming in the sense of, wanting to know more about the whole medium in general, is that playing these older games, especially nowadays where we have so many new games based around these older games, is just wanting to know the history of these titles and just going back and looking at the foundation that led the way for the way gaming is in modern times. Because dude, there are hella remakes, sequels, and even spin-off media forms of things outside of games that are based on these entire IPs and franchises that you just want to go back and understand what the source material was, just to really appreciate the vision that these developers of their time might have seen in that time when we had more limited technology than we do today. Because it's things like these new TV shows and gaming deals that bring a whole new audience of eyes to the entire world of gaming. So whether you're playing as an already established fan or someone just going back to see the differences between then and now, retro games just provide a myriad of usages no matter who you are and why you're playing them. But I will say though that when it comes to mixing modern and retro games, I will say that playing remastered titles is probably the best way to experience in older titles. For example, look at Xenoblade Chronicles. That game basically on Switch is the only way to play this damn game because the only alternative is the Wii version that is just completely booty butt. The whole purpose of a remastered game is to serve as a bridge between maybe an older franchise and the modern gamer that might not want to go back and deal with the older graphics, maybe lower frame rate and just the overall limitations of hardware of that time, but still want to enjoy a good story that might have been told from a game like the original Final Fantasy VII. But even if an older game has your eye, it can sometimes be better and maybe even cheaper to play the more modern remastered version of that game, depending on if the original title has much more value placed on it by players and just having that older, more original version of the game. So whatever your means of playing these games is, it's pretty apparent that modern titles are having an epidemic of just not having original ideas and pretty much copying off one another for whatever reasons that may be. So having these older titles where just having experimentation within gaming was like the norm and actually needed, playing these older titles can act as a time capsule to bring you back in time to where gaming just had so many new ideas and mechanics based around the game aimed to give you the most fun and not aim to squeeze as much money as possible out of your pockets just from playing the title. So with that, I do think that even if you enjoy modern titles, it might be a good idea to have a small library of older titles that you might play in between all these other games, because having these games just gives you immediate access to timeless experiences whenever you want to have them on top of the already cool experiences of the modern gaming world. And if this age of gaming is one that you find yourself enjoying more often than not, then that just might be a sign that playing retro games might be the best option for when it comes to playing games in your downtime. But no matter whether you want to invest full time into this whole retro gaming hobby, I just think that playing retro games is essential to really enjoy the entire experience of what gaming has to offer. So what do you guys think about retro games? Feel free to leave a comment down below. As always, if you like the video, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.